Hi, I'm BJ, and this is the Arcane Alienist Podcast. Hey everybody, I'm going to do something a little different this episode. I'm going to do a solo play, but I'm going to record it live for I'm testing out and playing around with the Old School Essentials Advanced Fantasy rules because I'm going to I think we're going to move to the Advanced Fantasy rules with my existing Old School Essentials campaign. I don't think that's going to maybe one person it might change their class. Um, maybe a couple characters, but I think mostly it's not going to have much effect other than bringing in some of the optional rules for running the game and combat and magic and things like that. But if we have any replacement characters or new sort of hirelings join the group, we may get some combinations we didn't see before that you couldn't get with the standard 7 character types from Classic, Old School Essentials Classics, which is basically BX. So I wanted to do a little play test, demonstrate the rules for any of you who have not played Old School Essentials, but also do it with some character types that you don't find in the Classic Fantasy rules that you get out of the Advanced Fantasy rules. So that's what we're doing today. And so first we'll go through we'll build the party and put them together, and then let you know what characters I'm running with, and then we'll get them started off on a dungeon crawl. So hope you enjoy this. Here we go. Okay, so I'm going to generate 5 characters for this solo play. And what I want to do is I want to explore some of the options available in Old School Essentials Advanced, which brings in the 1E AD&D options for characters and races, but they've been done in a BX style of they've been sort of, they're not direct copies from AD&D. They're inspired by and as close as they can be while still being kind of balanced and formulated to run BX style, so you can use Old School Essentials. So I want to try to get some either classes in the group that are not part of the that are different, that they're not part of the standard classes, the fighter, magic user, thief, and cleric. Or if I use those classes, at least I'd like to try to have them be non-human, because one thing that OSE Advanced also gives you is the option for the option for demi-humans to separate out race from class, so that it's more like playing AD&D and D&D for every version since where race is not class. So what happens though when you build characters, rules as written in Old School Essentials is you roll 3d6 down the line, and then you're kind of stuck with the parameters that the dice give you. You pick a class that kind of fits well with those scores, and you can adjust your prime requisite a little bit by shaving numbers off a couple of the other scores. But you're still your options are kind of limited. So to make sure I can kind of use these other options, what I'm going to do, I'm not going to roll 6 separate characters. I'm going to roll one set of scores, and then I'll assign them as needed to kind of get what I want. So let's look at the classes first that we want to use. I definitely want to have a paladin. That's going to be a human. Let's see, I'm going to roll some dice to see if these characters are going to be male or female. Odds are male, evens female. So my first character is going to be a human paladin who is female. My next character, let's do a bard, also human, also female. I'm going to do a cleric. Let's have the cleric be a dwarf, a male dwarf. Let's do let's go ahead and do a magic user, but we'll have the magic user be a half elf. Again, male half elf. Okay. And the last one I'm going to do, I'm going to try the multi-class options that you get. I'm going to go with a gnome. Again, one of the new races, and I'm going to do a thief, but I'm going to multi-class that with warden, which warden comes from the carcass crawler zines that go with Old School Essentials. And Warden is it's a variant ranger. It's an option to a ranger to have a ranger that doesn't have spells. It doesn't really say, I think, in the zine what you would limit it to. I guess you could argue that you would limit it to whatever races could be rangers by the way they define the races. I do know because it doesn't have all the rangers' ability, it uses the fighter's XP table instead of the ranger's XP table. So it's in a way it's almost like a fighter that sacrifices heavy armor to get some of the more ubiquitous ranger skills, like woodland survival skills related to being a ranger, without the spells and the magic. So I'm going to say that could be a fighter thief. So this is kind of a gnome fighter thief, but it's going to be a warden thief. And this gnome will be male. Alright, so I got a female paladin, human paladin, a male dwarf cleric, a female human bard, a male gnome warden thief, and a half-elf magic user male. Alright, well, let's roll these scores and see what we get. Okay, first score is going to be an 11. Second score is going to be 8. Next score I get is 14. And 12. again. And last is a 9. 11, 8, 14, 12, 14, and 9. So I will plug those scores in to these characters. I'm going to do this in Fantasy Grounds because it's just quick and automated to do it that way. And that's also probably how I'll run through the solo plays using this group of characters through a dungeon. Just so it's easy for me to kind of keep everything organized and stuff like that. So I will stop here and I will come back later with some fleshed out characters, and we'll do a little bit of dungeon crawling. Okay, let's take a look at the party in its final formulation here. We've got, let's see, the first character is Vanya, lawful female human paladin. She's got a sword and a mace for weapons with plate mail and a shield, and some standing backpack with some of your standard adventuring gear, along with a wooden holy symbol. All these guys are going to have your standard, backpack, rope, rations, bedrolls, things like that. We've got Sabina, who is a neutral human female bard. She's got a short bow, a short sword, and a dagger, chainmail armor, and she's got a flute for her musical instrument. Got Predrag, who is a neutral half-elf magic user. He's got, of course, a staff and a hand. He's got, what I give him, 4 daggers. Your standard adventuring gear, along with his spell book. Instead of torches, he's got a lantern and some oil flasks. I figure that's a pretty good role for a magic user to carry a lantern, and then he can just set it on the floor if he's going to, or the ground if he's got to cast spells. Then we have Erland. Erland is a lawful male dwarf cleric. He's got chainmail armor, shield, a warhammer, a sling with some sling stones, and a silver holy symbol. And finally we have Argrir. Argrir is a neutral male gnome who is a thief warden multiclass. Leather armor, short bow, short sword, a dagger, thieves' tools, and he's got a small steel mirror tucked into the pouch with his thieves' tools that he can use to look around a corner. And again, your standard adventuring gear. Anybody that had infravision, I forwent torches, but then I had Predrag, the magic user, pick up a lantern because he'll be adventuring with a couple of humans, so it will be beneficial to them, even though he doesn't need it. But certainly I'm envisioning Argrir the gnome as being sort of the scout and the thief who's going to have to creep ahead, sometimes in darkness, so it's good for him to have infravision. Although I suppose he would need torches. Maybe I should go ahead and put some torches for him and Erlen. It's not like they never need torches. Improvision doesn't solve all problems in the dark, does it? Anyway, that is the party. I think that's a pretty nice Old School Essentials party drawn on the advanced rules for a different set of characters that you would not normally get in the classic version that is based on the original Moldvay and Cook BX rules. So we'll put these guys through a dungeon and see what happens. Hopefully they'll survive. If they get killed, I may be rolling up some new characters to join the survivors to tackle it again. So anyway, we'll see what happens. Before we go into the dungeon, I failed to mention that for Argreer, who is our Thief Warden multi-class, I am also going to use the rules from Carcass Crawler issue 1 about using a D6 version of Thief Skills. This is a optional rules written by, I'm pretty sure, Gavin can't talk. Gavin Norman wrote these, who is the guy behind Old School Essentials. And in this this version, you use D6, so it's consistent with the way everyone else checks for adventuring skills. And what happens is the thief has his 8 skills: climb surfaces, find or move traps, hear noise, hide in shadows, move silently, open locks, pick pockets, and read languages. Each one starts at a default of 1. And then at first level, the thief gets 4 expertise points to allocate however they see fit to those abilities, and they will get 2 more at each additional level. So this is similar to the way they do it in Lamentations of the Flame Princess. What I'm going to do for Argreer here is on his, I'm going to leave his, I'm not going to add anything to hear noises right now because he's a gnome, so he's already got a 2 and 6 chance. I'm going to add this to find and remove traps, hide in shadows, move silently, and open locks. And those will be the thief skills that are at a 2 until he levels up, and then we may enhance some of those, or we may expand on his abilities. But I just wanted to add that here before we get started into the dungeon crawl. So those are his thief skills using the D6 system from Carcass Crawler issue number 1, which is the official Old School Essentials zine. You can get it from Necrotic Gnome here in the U.S. and Exalted Funeral, I believe, is who publishes in the U.K. Anyway, on to the dungeon. Okay, here's the setup for this dungeon. This small village or town is it's the week of leading up to the Harvest Festival, so people have brought fruits of the harvest into town, have begun to gather closer into town and to bring harvest to the chapel or the temple in town, because the priests will oversee the Harvest Festival. They'll bless the food and distribute it. And people, of course, brought other offerings of goods, crafts and money and donations for the temple as well. So here's a temple sitting here in this small town full of food and gold, and sitting there ripe for the plundering. So a band of orcs has come into town in the middle of the night and raided the temple, but also not only made off with the food and the money, but also the head priest. So the villagers have employed some of these adventurers who are hanging around town to please go at least rescue our head priest, and if you can get some of the other stuff, great. And keeping the extra loot, we just want our priest back and our whatever they took out of the church. And if you don't, it doesn't matter. We're doing a dungeon crawl here, not a real role playing session. But that's the objective: is go into the dungeon and rescue the head priest and try to recover the wealth of the small wealth, or the money that was in the temple, because the town needs it for the festival and for other purposes. So we find the heroes, they've tracked the orcs to a cave out in the woods some distance out of town, and they've entered a small 5-foot opening that immediately veers around. And so here we've got them in the marching order with Argrir, the gnome, in front to scout ahead, followed by Vanya, our paladin, and then Erland, the dwarf cleric. And in the middle of the party is Predrig, the half-elf, the half-elven magic user who is going to carry a lantern. And then we'll have Sabina, who is a bard, will kind of bring up the rear just because she's a little tougher than Predrig, so in case something jumps out behind him, he's not a sitting duck, just holding the lantern and unable to do anything but cast a spell. Alright, so first things first, we're going to have Argrir move ahead. As they move into the cave, they can look. They kind of see from the light outside a bend in the corner, and as Argrir moves closer, he can tell there's torchlight flickering from around the corner. So I'm going to roll first for him to see if he moves silently. He does move silently up to the corner, and there's enough shadows. I'm going to say he can peek around the corner without having to make a hide in shadows roll, just to take a little peek. And what he sees is a room about 30 by 30. There's a table in the middle of the room with an orc sitting, drinking a tankard, and there are two other, against the western wall, there are two kind of crudely made beds and two other orcs dozing there. So he's got two guards that are asleep, but one is alert, and he's drinking presumably ale or grog or something on a mug, out of this mug. But he's still kind of looking in this direction. So it's shadowy enough that Argrir could possibly dart across to the other side. You've got about a 10-foot wide opening that enters into this chamber. He could, in about 10 foot deep, so it's a 10 by 10 little hallway or tunnel that'll open up into this chamber. He could dart across the opening to the other side, around the other corner, and try to position there to make room for his friends to follow. I'm going to have him back up, just to say that he's got to back up to whisper to his friends what he's doing, and then we're going to try this again. So he's going to have to move back up to where he was, and then we're going to do another move silently to try the second phase of his movement. And I will know the results, but of course Argrir doesn't know the results. He fails his move silently. So he gets across, but the orc hears him. We'll see if he's able to hide as he crouches behind this other corner, though. Yes, he does kind of disappear into the shadows. So the orc hears something move out there, catches a flicker of movement, but it doesn't see. Meanwhile, the rest of the party, beginning with Vanya, is going to move up to the corner and prepare to engage. I'm going to have, we'll say, Sabina actually moves ahead of Predrig, because he's got a lantern and he doesn't want to shine his light around that corner, but he does want to move up if a melee breaks out so that the humans can see well enough to do something. So again, we've got this sort of 10 by 10 little tunnel that goes into the chamber. Now Argrir is on the left side of the opening, crouched in the shadows, hidden, but he did not go unheard, and the rest of the party is around the right corner, preparing for melee. I don't think these orcs are going to be surprised, so we will roll initiative. Well, we'll declare actions. What's going to happen is, if possible, I think Vanya and Erland will move into this hallway to sort of ensure that only two orcs can move forward, since they're the heavily armored and heavy armed too, while Argrir, the thief gnome, thief, warden, and Sabina, our human bard, will kind of stand behind and to the side of them to use their bows, and then Predrag's just going to provide lighting for everybody for the time being. So let's see what happens with initiative. The heroes get a 5. All right, let's see what the orcs get. The orcs also get a 5, so this is going to have simultaneous initiative. Wow. So we'll adjudicate the heroes' actions first. I guess what we'll do, instead of going through, I'll tell you what we'll do, instead of doing movement, missile, magic, melee for one side than the other, we'll do movement for the heroes, movement for the orcs, and we'll go back and forth. Because what's going to happen is this one orc who is awake is going to yell at his companions to wake up. We have someone's trying to come in, but he is going to go ahead and move up just a little bit and get into position to protect the room, but I don't think he's going to run all the way out in the hallway by himself. So the orcs may have effectively lost their chances of anything meaningful here, but we'll see what happens. Movement. Yeah, Vanya just kind of steps up into the gap. Agru joins her, so they're standing side by side at the entrance of this tunnel. And then Agru slides over behind Vanya, and Sabina slides over behind Erland, so that they've got their bows out. And Predrag just, since he's not going to cast a spell, he's just going to use his lantern to kind of light for him, provide light. He's just going to move up. He's still around the corner, shielded from the orcs, but he can shine light in the area so that everybody can see to fight if they don't have dark vision. The other 2 orcs are going to spend the entire round kind of waking up, shaking their eye, setting up, standing out of bed, and grabbing their weapons. So this other orc is just, like I said, is going to move up to kind of protect the doorway to the room, but not close ranks with everybody else. So that is the round. I think what's going to happen now is, for declared actions, is Vanya, the paladin, or Erland, our dwarven cleric, will take a 5-foot advance, assuming they win initiative, so that they're not in the room, but they're now in the opening to the room, so that the orcs can't come any closer, and everybody will just move in behind them with the opportunity if they can. So that's how we're going to do this. And of course they'll do melee. Agru and Sabina will be ready with their bows, and Predrag will just continue to shine his lantern in to illuminate the combat zone. The other 2 orcs in their back are going to get up and grab their weapons, have gotten up and grabbed their weapons on their last turn. They're also going to try to press forward. They're wielding hand axes, so they don't have anything to. Well, I guess they could throw hand axes, but then they wouldn't have anything left to fight with. All right. Not a very well prepared trio of orc sentries, are they? You know what? That doesn't make any sense, does it? I'm going to say that they do have hand axes they can throw. So and then another hand axe. They've both got 2 hand axes, so they'll throw, and then they can use their remaining one for melee. So these one is going to move up to join ranks for melee, and one is just going to hurl a hand axe from the back of the room and try to hit somebody. Okay, to initiative. Hero initiative is a 1, and the orcs get a 3, so the orcs are going to get to go first. So we start with movement. So again, the orc in front steps up 5 feet. One of the ones in the back is able to come around and join him. And this other one is going to take a few steps up, and then we'll go to missile, and he's going to throw his 1 hand axe at we'll say he's going to throw it at Erland the dwarf, because he decides he doesn't like the dwarf more than he dislikes the human. He misses, though, so it goes over. Basically, Erland is short. It kind of goes over his head and smacks into the wall and then drops to the floor. They have no magic, so I'll move to melee. Of course, Erland's now got a second orc that has closed ranks with him, who tries to attack him and misses. And then the final orc attacks Vanya the paladin and hits for 1 point of damage. Okay. Hero's turn. So we're going to start. There's they didn't really need to move because the orcs closed ranks with them. So there's really no movement to be had now. So we will go to missile fire. I think Vanya is going to, or I'm sorry, Sabina is going to fire her short bow kind of over her friends and try to hit this guy in the back. And misses. And then I believe Argreer is going to do the same. He's going to just kind of shoot up and over, try to hit that orc in the back. And he does hit with a 19 for 3 points. So that orc does not look very healthy at this point. He's only got 4 hit points. Of course, again, the heroes don't know that. I, as the DM, know that, and you, as the listener, now know that. We'll move to, there's no magic, so we'll move into melee. Vanya attacks with her sword. That's a 20. There is no critical hit. There's 20 is an automatic hit in Old School Essentials, but there are no crits in Old School Essentials, so it's not double damage. Although I'm sure that's something many people would house rule. But she rolls an 8, and that is enough. That's maximum damage anyway. That is enough to kill that orc. Erland has a warhammer. Remember, he's a dwarf cleric. He attacks the orc in front of him and also hits. And d6 damage, and he rolls a 3. Not enough to kill it. It is enough to kill it, I'm sorry, because that orc had been... because he actually rolled a 4. I forgot he's got a +1 for his strength, so that is enough to kill it. Okay, so everything has happened. We got one orc. I think he's lost his 2 compatriots, so it may be time for him to make a morale check when his initiative comes up. Because I think Vanya and Erland are both going to advance on him for melee. The other 2 are going to shoot at him first before we get into melee. And I think probably what Erland and Vanya will try to do, they have enough movement, they're going to move to the side so that there's a clear line of shot for their archers. I hope you can envision this in your head as you're listening as I describe it. Anyway, but let's see what happens on initiative. Hero initiative is a 5. Will the orc even be around long enough to make a morale check? We'll see. His initiative is a 1. So not very likely unless everybody just whiffs. Of course, the heroes can move in such a way to cut him off from any really easy escape. I mean, once he gets into melee, he has to do a fighting withdrawal, right? We'll take an all-out retreat. So Ireland's got a speed of 30, and he can just kind of move up on him and then hook around him with a kind of a diagonal step. And Vanya can also just follow along right up beside him. So there's some movement. The archers don't really need to move. There's enough torchlight in the room that Vanya can see she does not need the lantern from Predrick standing kind of off into the side. So we will have our archers go first. Let's see, Agrier, short bow. That's a miss. Sabina, the Pard. Also misses. And see, we've got melee now. In the default rules for Old School Essentials, you can shoot at somebody if they're in melee. You know, if they're within range. There's really no. There's not a lot of penalty. There's an optional rule that kind of uses the AD&D rule where you decide, so we've got 3 people in my here. I'd roll a d6, and on 1 to 2, the arrow would actually hit the orc that's being aimed at. On a 2 to 3, it might hit Vanya on a 3 to 4 hit Vanya and a 5 to 6 hit Erland. I'm not using that rule. Probably, if you don't want to make it too easy on the players, you might use that rule, and I might think of using that. And traditionally, what I've done in old school essentials is if you've got a clear line of sight, even if they're in melee with someone else, there's nobody obscuring it, which I kind of violated that rule earlier by allowing the archers to kind of shoot past, particularly a gnome, to shoot over the head of a human, past him and try to work. I maybe shouldn't have done that, but that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm trying to explore the rules and how they work as I run some characters through a dungeon, so that when I do this with players, I've got a little more sense of how things flow, and if the advanced rules change anything over the basic old school essentials rules. Anyway, where are we? We are to melee. Erland will try to brain him with his warhammer, and he hits. And that's the end of that orc. He rolled 7 damage. The orc only had 4 hit points to start. I think he might have taken an arrow at one point, so that's the end of that orc. So they have secured the room with no orcs fleeing to warn anybody else that may be deeper in the dungeon. We are at about 18 minutes to get through that encounter. Might go faster with players. I don't know. I don't know if it goes faster with me narrating what's going on out loud, or if it would go faster with players controlling these characters, because they've got to kind of discuss with each other what they're going to do. And it always slows down as you go around the table. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? As opposed to me, it kind of comes together in my head for all the characters, and I just say it. Anyway, that's the combat remains relatively quick. That was 5 PCs versus 3 orcs. In the first, we're 18.5 minutes, but I spent the first, I think, few minutes of this segment describing how they get into the cave and assess the situation with their scout and make ready to make an attack. So really, the combat goes a lot quicker. It was not 18 minutes. It was less than that. So again, we're seeing a fast, smooth combat scenario, assuming that we stick to the order of operations and everybody declares an action, and things go very smoothly. Because then, hey, it's move and attack, or just attack, or maybe you're casting a spell. You declare you're casting a spell when magic comes up. We see if the spell works. So very quick, very smooth, very efficient. And these characters, of course, are functioning like BX characters, even though they're not conventional BX characters. So far, so good. I think we'll end this recording segment right now, because with the introductory material, we'll be looking at about a half-hour episode. And we will go deeper into the dungeon the next time. I would appreciate it if you enjoyed this episode. Please let me know. I will get... if I just look at the number of listens, I imagine I'll get a typical number of listens. And that just tells me people listen to this. It doesn't tell me whether they liked it, or it tells me I don't know. That could also be people that listen to 2 or 3 minutes and then decide this isn't for them, and they stop the episode. So please send me a message. You can either leave me a voice message through the Anchor app or the Anchor website. You can also email me at arcanedartalienist@gmail.com. Either send me an email or email me a voice clip. And I'll play the voice clip as a call, or if it's just an email, I'll just read the email and respond to it. But let me know whether you like this, whether you want to hear more of this. I'll probably try it a couple more times at least, but if there's not a lot of response, I'll let it go by the wayside. But anyway, that's it. It's an initial encounter in a dungeon crawl, featuring first level characters using old school essentials advanced fantasy rules.
Thanks for listening to the Arcane Alienist podcast. The music you're hearing is Come and Get It by Scott Holmes Music. The cover art I use for the episodes is by Dave Bone. Be sure and check out his website, ironseer.com, for a lot of other great gaming-related content. You can always leave me a voice message through the Anchor app or at the Anchor website, or you can email me at arcane.alienist@gmail.com. Once again, I appreciate you listening. Thanks so much.